What's your favorite scary movie? Alright, now that we're done with that, I'm gonna hang this boy up. Alright, beautiful. So if you haven't guessed already, today we're gonna be talking about the original Scream movie. But before we get into that, I want to say welcome back to my channel, and also sorry for waiting like 2 weeks to upload another video. I went on vacation again and I started an internship, so my life's been really hectic as of late, but I promise I'll get working on these again. So for this video, I wanted to talk about the original Scream movie, which is one of my, if not my favorite horror movie. And I actually hadn't seen Scream until like the fall of last year. Before then, I went to the movies and I saw Scream 5 when it came out with my friend and her dad, and I had not seen any Scream movies before then. It was very confusing because if you know the series, you know it's very like meta and self-referencing. So they made a lot of jokes and comments about like the other movies in the series, and I had not seen them. So when I got to college last fall, I decided to sit down and watch Scream for the first time, and I instantly fell in love with it. It's a great movie. So if you haven't seen the Scream poster before, it looks like this. And it has a picture of Drew Barrymore's face on it. So we start the movie with an opening shot on Drew Barrymore. She's just making some popcorn for a little movie night for herself. And her character's name is Casey. So Casey gets a phone call and she picks it up. And it's this like deep voice. And it's like, who's speaking? And she says, well, who are you calling? And I'm not gonna lie, Ghostface's phone voice, kind of sexy. Kind of hot. Sorry. So Ghostface keeps pressing her for information. And Casey's being pretty smart about it. She's like not giving away her name or her address or anything. But also like, just hang up, you know? Like if a random person called me, even if they weren't really being creepy, if it was just a random person, I would hang up immediately. So they're going along, they're being a little flirty, it's a little weird, but then all of a sudden Ghostface says, what's your name? And she says, why do you want to know? And he says, because I want to know who I'm looking at. Major tone shift. Now we know. This isn't just some like weird guy, it's a creepy stalker who's watching her. And Casey finally hangs up the phone, but then she answers it again. Stop answering the phone. It's not gonna go well. And also, take the goddamn popcorn off the stove, okay? I get when you were walking around the house and you were like in the other room and talking to this creepy guy on the phone, maybe it wasn't the first thing on your mind. But there's a shot where she is standing right in front of the stove where the popcorn is overflowing and she has not been called back yet. Take the goddamn popcorn off the stove. So all of a sudden the guy on the other line says, I want to play a game. And Casey hears this noise and it turns out her boyfriend is tied up on her back porch, and the killer tells her, you're gonna have to answer these 3 questions correctly or he's gonna die and you're gonna die. So Casey gets the first question right, and then it comes to the second question, and she gets it wrong. Her boyfriend, gutted. He's gone. Now after this, the guy on the other line asks the third question, and my girlie just starts running. She gets chased, and Ghostface appears. It's the first appearance of the iconic mask, of course, that I was wearing before. So Casey's running. She's running from the killer, and she sees in the distance her parents are coming home in their car. She just needs to wait it out until they get there, and then they can save her. Unfortunately, that does not happen. Casey gets stabbed, and Casey gets hanged in her front yard. Right, so now we're here. Drew Barrymore was all over the posters. Casey was, like, the main character. It's been 10 minutes of this film, and she has died. She's gone, she's dead, there's no bringing her back. So where does the film go from here? Well, it turns out Casey isn't the main character, and this was just a huge expectation subversion moment that really stresses how much this movie likes to set up classic horror tropes and then just change them at the last minute, and it's adding to the meta nature of this film. So with Casey dead, we need to switch to our new main character, of course, and that is Sidney Prescott. Sidney Prescott is kind of this like popular good girl. She's first seen in like a white nightgown, kind of depicting her innocence. And she's alone in her room when there's a knock on her window, and it's her boyfriend Billy. Billy is kind of the like popular bad boy type. Now I'm gonna be so real. Billy's hot, okay? Sydney's dad briefly peeps in and tells her that he is going to some kind of convention out of town, so he will be gone for the rest of the movie very conveniently. And then Sydney asks Billy why he came to her room, because he'd never done that before and it's weird. And he says, "I was watching TV, The Exorcist was on, and it made me think of you." Now that's a red flag. And if that wasn't enough of a red flag, he then goes on to complain how she's not putting out for him. So he may be hot, but he is an asshole. Now that we've been introduced to our main couple, we get some more characters introduced when they go to school the next day. Firstly, we're introduced to Gail Weathers, who is a reporter who is trying to report on Casey Becker's death. Then we get introduced to Tatum, who is Sydney's best friend, and is kind of like the popular mean girl. She's sarcastic, she's funny, she's cool. We find out that the police are questioning every student at this school, because that is where Casey also went. And so Sydney gets called into the principal's office, and the principal pets her hair, and it's uncomfortable and it's weird. But in this principal's office, we get introduced to another character, Dewey, who is Tatum's brother, as we later learn. He is a cop on the police force, and when I say ACAB, that includes Dewey, unfortunately. So obviously, Sydney didn't murder Casey, so she is let out of the principal's office very soon, and she goes out to the courtyard to meet the rest of her friends. So along with Billy and Tatum, there is Randy, who is the horror movie expert. He's kind of like an AV club type geek. And then additionally, there is Stu, who is Tatum's boyfriend. He's kind of weird and creepy and sexist, and also he's played by the guy who played Shaggy in the live-action Scooby-Doo. And I love that man. That actor. Not Stu. Don't get me wrong, not Stu. So this friend group, there's two couples. There's Sid and Billy, and then there's Tatum and Stu, and then Randy's also just there. And I want to know why Randy is included in this friend group, because it kind of seems like none of them like him. And also, he's just a vastly different personality than the rest of them. The rest of them are different in ways, but they're all kind of popular, cool people. And Randy's just there. So next we see Sydney at home after the school this day, and she's watching the news, and she sees Gail Weathers on the news reporting how this attack came almost exactly a year after Maureen Prescott's murder. And we can make the connection, of course, with the same last name, that this is Sydney's mother. So Sydney is obviously traumatized and scared, so she calls Tatum and asks if she can stay at Tatum's house for the night so she doesn't have to be alone. And Tatum's like, "Of course, I'll pick you up at 7. Sydney takes a nap and wakes up to a phone call. Now, who do we think is on this phone call? It is, of course, Ghostface again. She thinks it's Randy. Everyone always thinks it's Randy when Ghostface shows up. And because she thinks it's Randy, she starts making fun of horror movies, because that's his shtick, is that he loves horror movies, and it's another perfect little meta moment in this movie. And so this call is going a lot like the one with Casey at the beginning, where he's being all threatening and I want to play a game. He says, "I'm on your front porch," and she has balls. I'll give Sydney that one. She says, "No, you're not." She walks out of her house and stands on that front porch and is like, "I'm not seeing you out here. You're a liar." Now, unfortunately, this was a trap, and Ghostface is there, and he got into the house, and he starts chasing down Sydney. Sydney's fighting back. She's got a spirit in her. She runs to her room, and she contacts 911 through her computer, and then Ghostface disappears. He's gone. 0.2 seconds later, Billy shows up at her door again. "Why are you here?" That timing's a little bit too convenient, I think. So Billy comes in and gives her a hug, tries to comfort her, and his cell phone is visible. And Sydney sees it and makes a mental connection. She's like, "Hold up, you have a cell phone. That serial murderer was just talking to me on a cell phone. It must be you." And I was born in an age where everyone has cell phones, so I am not sure exactly how rare cell phones were, but I feel like that was not the smoking gun that she thought it was. But nevertheless, Dewey is at the front door and Billy gets arrested and taken away. Right after Billy's taken away, Tatum conveniently rolls up late. So that's a little suspicious. Where was she during this whole thing? And then yet another main character shows up, Gail, and Gail starts absolutely hounding Tatum and Sid about this attack. And Gail I haven't seen the other movies, and I'm sure she gets better, but she's kind of an asshole in this one, I'm not gonna lie. Like, stop hounding this traumatized girl, please. So next, we go to the police station with Billy and Sid. We learn that Sid's dad is missing. They cannot find him. They cannot contact him. Now, Gail just won't give it up. She also arrives at the police station, and there's a bunch of reporters near the front door trying to get to Sid and get a comment, and she's like, hold up. Isn't there a back exit to this place? Isn't that where she would be exiting to avoid all these reporters? So her and her cameraman sneak on over to the back exit where, in fact, Sid is exiting. So Gail comes back and confronts Sydney, and then we have a great interaction between the two where Sydney starts and says, "How's the book?" "It'll be out later this year." "I'll look for it." "I'll send you a copy." Sid punches her in the face. It's a hard right hook, and you know what? She deserved it. So then Sid is finally taken back to Tatum's house, but she gets a phone call again, and please stop picking up this goddamn phone. I know you think it might be your father, but I promise you it's most likely going to be Ghostface. And it is Ghostface again, which makes her think in her brain, wait a second, Billy's in jail right now, so he can't be calling me and threatening me. So Ghostface also realizes this, and Ghostface says, "Looks like you fingered the wrong guy." Now, why were those the words you chose? And second of all, again, so we actually learn that Sydney was the key witness in putting away Cotton Weary, who was suspected of murdering her mother. She was like the reason he got convicted and given the death penalty. So that's what he means by fingered the wrong guy. Obviously, Ghostface thinks that was not who killed her mother. So then the movie takes us back to school the next day. We get an iconic line from Gail talking about Cotton Weary and trying to prove that he's innocent. And she says, "I can save a man's life. Do you know what that will do for my book sales?" And while at school, two assholes dress up as Ghostface and run around the halls thinking it would be funny, and that's exactly what would happen at a public school. Sid finally walks up to Billy, who has been set free because his phone records did not show that he made a call that night. So he has been set free from the police station. Sid walks up to him, and he's being so manipulative. He's like, "How could you think it was me?" Which, like, fair enough, I guess. It's kind of rough if your girlfriend falsely accuses you of attacking her. But then he's also like, "Your mom died a year ago. I thought you were over that by now." So they go their separate ways, and later we see Sydney going into the bathroom at school, and she overhears these two girls talking about her in the stall, kind of like sharing goss. They think she made this all up for attention, and they refer to Billy as her bubble butt boyfriend Billy. And you know what? They kind of got him with that one. Once these two girls leave the bathroom, Sid realizes, wait a second, there's someone else in here. Out comes Ghostface again. Now you may be thinking that this is one of those pranksters from earlier, but we had just seen them in the principal's office getting berated. So, pretty sure this is the actual Ghostface chasing her down once again. Because of this chase scene, everyone gets sent home from school early, and there's also a curfew set in place. So as they are leaving school, we see Gail flirting with Dewey, kind of like to get an in on the story. And Dewey's falling for it, hook, line, and sinker. Dude, have some self-respect. Can't you tell you're being manipulated? And then Gail, they're talking about like how he's young to be a police officer, and he's like, "Oh, I'm like 26 or whatever," and she says, "You don't look a day over 12? Weird thing to say to someone you're flirting with, hey. And so Tatum, Randy, and Stu kind of come up to Sid and are like, "Hey, we're gonna throw a party tonight for curfew, of course." And Tatum's fit's going crazy in this scene, of course. She is, like, one of the only ones in this movie who, like, serves fits, you know? Like, the rest of them are dressed pretty normally, but Tatum takes it up a notch, and I respect it, and I'll shout her out for that one. So they've decided to throw this party after school, and then we cut to a scene of the principal trying on the, like, Ghostface mask from those two pranksters who were running around the school, and he hears something down the hall. He goes to investigate it. He gets absolutely slaughtered. So that is the third death of the movie. Now after school we see like Tatum and Sid together, and Tatum brings up the Richard Gere gerbil story, and if you don't know what that is, that's perfectly fine. You don't need to look it up. But I had heard of that like a few years ago, and it's just such a random, like, small piece of lore for this movie to be dropping. Then we cut to the movie store where we see Randy and Stu talking, and Billy is also in the store, but in a different place. And Randy and Stu are hardcore flirting with each other. Are you kidding me? Now, Randy proposes that he thinks it is Billy that's doing the murders. But Stu thinks it's Sydney's dad. He kind of plants that one in. We haven't heard that thus far, but he's like, I think it's Sydney's dad. Think about it. His wife was murdered a year ago, and he's conveniently out of town right now while all this is going down. And as Randy is telling Stu that he thinks it's Billy, Billy comes up from behind him, and Billy and Stu put him in like a sandwich together. Hot. Sorry, hot. I'd let them do that to me. So now, as Stu has said, Sydney's dad is a suspect, and this is furthered when the police track the call made to Sydney to her dad's phone, and he is nowhere to be found. So after all this prep and the movie store, they all finally head to the big party, which is where the rest of the movie takes place. And Dewey is like hanging out in his patrol car outside of the house, which is like a little weird, but I get that you're like a police officer and you're protecting them or whatever, but also Gail rolls up outside of the house. And what are you doing as an adult woman in your news van parked outside of a teenager's party? That's weird. And Dewey's such a fucking useless cop in this, I swear to God. You're just gonna fucking like sit there and flirt with Gail the whole time. And Dewey and Gail like go into the party together at one point, and Dewey's like, oh, you're underage drinking. Just kidding. You can do whatever you want. Dewey, you're corrupt. And in addition, Gail puts a fucking camera in the house. You can't plant a camera in a private residence to watch Gail. That is illegal. So the party's going pretty well. Gail and Dewey have left and are now sitting outside again, and Tatum goes down to get a beer for Stu in the garage. Now, in the garage, Ghostface appears again, and Ghostface appears, but Tatum thinks it's Randy playing a prank on her, which leads to one of the most iconic lines of dialogue from this whole movie, where Tatum says, "You want to play psycho killer? Can I be the helpless victim? No, please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the sequel." Now, unfortunately, after delivering that incredible line, Tatum gets attacked, but she puts up a good fight. She's playing dirty. She's kicking, she's clawing at him, and eventually she runs and tries to escape through a like doggy door in the garage door, which, first of all, didn't know that was a thing that happened. Like, I've never seen a doggy door be in a garage door. I've only seen them in, like, front doors. But Ghostface is like, you're crawling through this doggy door through the garage door. I'm going to open the garage door so you get lifted up with it and crushed in the machinery as it's opening. And I do not think any garage doors are that goddamn strong. Our garage door won't go down the whole way if there's a piece of fucking, like, string under it. It'll sense it and stop. But you know, I'm gonna suspend my disbelief because it's iconic and it's camp. Are you telling me someone gets murdered via garage door crushing in this movie? Yeah, that's camp. Now, Billy shows up to the party even though he was not invited, and he asks to talk to Sid upstairs. So they go upstairs, and Randy's upset because he was like, oh, I thought this was gonna be my chance with Sid. And Stu makes an iconic clueless reverence and goes, as if, and I had never caught that before. I'd seen this movie like various times before, and this time was the only time I caught that they make a clueless reference. Are you kidding me? So Billy and Sid are up in a bedroom and talking, and Sydney's like, I'm sorry. I've been all like self-absorbed with this post-traumatic stress stuff. Dude, Billy's manipulated you so bad, girly. I'm so sorry. And then Billy, of course, has to drop another meta line, and he says, it's all a movie. It's all one big movie, and you don't get to pick the genre. So, of course, because of this, Billy and Sid start fucking. Now, we cut away while they're starting to get it on, and we see Randy and a bunch of the people from the party watching a horror movie, and Randy stops and is like, wait. You guys don't know the rules of a horror movie? And they're like, what are you talking about? So he explains it, and he says, rule number 1, never have sex. only the virgins survive the horror movie. If you have sex, that's a death sentence. Rule number 2, no drugs and no drinking. He calls these 2 rules the sin factor. You have to be like innocent and pure to survive the horror movie. Rule number 3 is a classic: never say, "I'll be right back," because you're not making it back. After Randy describes these rules, he gets a call saying that the principal's dead body was found. He tells the whole party, and the rest of them are like, "Oh, we gotta go see that." Let's take a field trip to see our principal's dead body. So everyone leaves except Randy is still in the living room. Sid and Billy are up in the bedroom. Tatum is dead in the garage, but the rest of the characters don't know that yet. And Stu had previously said, "I'll be right back," and had left the room. So he's still in the vicinity around the house. He didn't leave. But everyone else is gone. As a little side note, Dewey and Gail have found Sydney's dad's car in the woods, abandoned and empty. Now we come back to Billy and Sid in the room post messing around, and Sid asks Billy, what did you do with your one phone call? When you're arrested and put in jail, you get one phone call. How did you use it? And he says he called his dad, but she's a little suspicious and not believing it. And we get the impression that she thinks he might have used his one phone call to call her and threaten her as Ghostface to kind of throw her off his trail. But I don't think that the police would be very happy or allow a person who was arrested to use their one phone call to threaten someone's life, especially if it's the person they were just arrested for attacking. But Billy gets defensive again that Sid's accusing him, and he says, "What do I have to do to prove to you that I'm not a killer?" And then immediately gets stabbed by Ghostface. So Ghostface starts chasing Sydney. Sydney falls out of the house, falls out the attic window out of the house and sees Tatum's dead body. So now Sydney knows Tatum is dead. The next thing we see is Randy still watching this horror movie, and it's a great meta scene. They did a recreation of it in Scream 5 that I saw that I didn't really fully understand until seeing the original one. And the original one's so much better, but he's watching this horror movie and he's yelling at the person in the horror movie "Oh my god, turn around, he's right behind you, come on." How you do when a main character is making what seems like stupid decisions. But the irony of it is that the killer, Ghostface, is actually creeping up behind Randy. So while he's yelling at this character to turn around because there's something dangerous behind them, he should be turned around because there's something dangerous behind him. But he's drunk, obviously, by his mannerisms and also by the incredible, camera shot in this part where it's kind of, tilting back and forth to kind of show that disorientation. And the cameraman sees this from his van on the little camera Gail set up earlier, so he runs out to try to help, but then he remembers the camera has a 30-second delay. Ghostface comes up to the cameraman, stabs him, kills him. Randy is actually fine. It was just a distraction to get to the cameraman. Dewey and Gail show up again. Dewey goes into the house. Gail stays outside. Then we see Dewey's been stabbed. He's on the ground. We don't know if he's alive or not. And Sydney is standing at the front door of the house. The door is open. And both Stu and Randy run up and are like, "You gotta let me in. He's the killer." They're both saying that about each other. And Sydney's standing there and she's just like, "Fuck both of you," and closes the door on both of them. And you know what? Smart move. Me too. I would do that too. Now, a twist out of nowhere, Billy's actually still alive. He comes stumbling down the stairs, holding on to his fucking stab wounds in his shirt. But if you look closely, I don't think there's any holes in that shirt. I think it's just red stains. And he comes down to Sid and he's like, "Give me the gun, let me have the gun." Sydney, do not give him the goddamn gun. But of course she does give Billy the gun, and then Randy is let in and he's like, "Stu's gone mad." And Billy does this sexy little turn and goes, "We all go mad sometimes," and shoots Randy in the fucking shoulder. And yeah, that was hot. Sorry. So Billy admits to faking his stabbing, being stabbed. Stu shows up again, and we've got our 2 killers. So our killers this whole time have been Billy and Stu. Now they kind of explain their whole plan to Sid in a villain monologue-esque scene. And there's this one part where I saw someone point out that one of them's standing there and the other one's kind of right behind them with their head beside them, and it's giving a 2-headed snake two-headed being imagery. And looking back, watching that scene again, the way that Stu looks at Billy, Stu is in love. You cannot convince me otherwise. So in this villain monologue, we get to learn that Billy blames Sid's mom on the reason that Billy's mom left. Because Sid's mom was having an affair with Billy's dad, and that caused Billy's mom to leave. And that's what's driving Billy in this murder spree. Now, you might be wondering what Stu's motive in this is. I don't think Stu really has a motive. I think he's under Billy's spell, and also he's a little bit not right in the head, especially because of the acting that goes on in this scene. My God, give him an Oscar. Now, Stu brings out Sid's father, and they're planning on framing it all on Sid's father, and that is why Stu had planted that idea earlier to Randy. They're planning on saying it was the 1-year anniversary of his wife's death. He went crazy. He went insane and started murdering a bunch of people and then shot himself in the head. And to make this story convincing, Billy and Stu need to look like they were victims of an attack and weren't like somehow left unharmed, because that would be suspicious. So they go and they stab each other repeatedly, and then fucking Stu goes, "I'm feeling a little woozy here." After this stabbing, Stu goes back to grab the gun, and it's missing. Gail has it, and she's in the hallway pointing it at them. Now, unfortunately, Gail, as well as being pushy, is a little bit of an idiot. She does not take the safety off of the gun, so Billy and Stu end up getting the gun back from her. While Billy and Stu are attacking Gail, Sid gets away, and then Sid calls them Ghostface style and is like, "Do you want to play a game?" Now, Stu and Billy are kind of panicking. They're trying to find Sydney because they can't lose her because she'll give the police all the information. And Billy is walking by this closet door. Sid comes out of the closet door with an umbrella and stabs him with an umbrella, which must use a lot of fucking force to get an umbrella. That shit is not sharp. Stabs him with this umbrella, and she's wearing the full Ghostface costume. And while I appreciate the full circle moment and the irony of that, did you really need to spend your time putting on the whole getup? I feel like maybe that was unnecessary a little bit. So after stabbing Billy, Sid kind of starts running again. Stu tackles her, and she electrocutes him to death with the TV. Brutal. So far, we've had people stabbed, hanged, crushed by a garage door, and now electrocuted? Dude. That's so gruesome. So now with Stu out of the way, Billy, of course, has to try to kill Sid one last time, and while he's about to kill her, Gail shoots him dead. He's on the floor. They do shoot him one more time in the head later, but he's out of the picture. So with the 2 killers dead, we only have a few characters surviving. We have Sydney, of course, our final girl. We have Randy, our horror movie expert. We have Gail, the news reporter. We have Dewey, the absolutely useless cop. And we have Mr. Prescott, Sydney's dad, who is a minor character. So with the 2 killers dead, the authorities arrive. They take Dewey to the hospital. Gail, of course, gets right on it, and while still bleeding from being attacked, starts reporting on the news story. And the movie ends with her leading the camera crew into the house where this all just took place and saying, "Come on, move it. This is my big shot. Let's go." So that is the original Scream movie, one of my favorite horror movies of all time. It's a great movie. It has great horror and comedic timing and humor, and it's a sleigh all around. Now, usually I talk about the fashion in movies, and this one doesn't really have many standouts. It's not bad costuming, it's not bad fits at all. It feels very accurate for what teenagers would wear, but there's no fits that I'm like, wow, that's so fashionable, except for maybe a few of Tatum's looks she kind of goes crazy on. And the score of this movie is also really good. There's not really a soundtrack in the sense of using previously made music, actual songs. I think they play a little bit of a few songs, but the real standout is the original scoring of the movie and the horror music and how it builds up expectations just to shut them back down again when nothing happens. And it does that repeatedly over and over, and it really, like, it makes the whole suspense of the film. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you have any ideas for future videos, go ahead and leave them down below. Some things that I've been thinking about doing one on the Glee documentary, because it's very bad and I have a lot of thoughts on it. And I've also been thinking of making a video on Pretty Woman, because it's one of my favorite, like, rom-coms of all time. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Honestly, it's made so well, and I don't hear enough people talking about it. So those are some thoughts, but, like, I'm open to suggestions, so let me know down below. Alright, thank you so much for watching this video. As always, I would appreciate it if you gave this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and left a comment down below. I hope you enjoyed this discussion of Scream, and I'll see you next time. Bye!